Hello, welcome to another episode of Interactive Session with corporate executives and very influential people in our society. Today I have a very special guest with me and his name is NJ Ayuk. He's the executive CEO of the African Energy Chamber and the CEO of the Centurion Law Group. NJ is doing the most for Africa. He happens to be the voice. He speaks for the Africans, specifically when it comes to the energy sector. And today, I have NJ with me, and I'm going to ask him very, very interesting questions. But also, we want to get to know NJ on a personal level. So NJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you very much. Now, before we go, I want you to know that this show is sponsored by Orama Corporate Services. Now, NJ, you are a very influential person. You've been on Forbes Most Influential in 2015, 2023. You've also been one of the most influential people in Africa. I personally listen to you. I hear what you talk about. You seem to direct Africans on what to do. You want to elevate Africa. You speak, regardless, for Africa and the solutions. We want to understand, who is NJ and how did you get to this point?
Well, I'm just a little country boy who's trying to do my job. I think my person is actually less important more than what we stand for. I think, first of all, to watch young people like you really looking at Africa and looking at trying to drive this, I was lucky to be one of those Africans that had an amazing opportunity to be to go to law school, become a lawyer, and then get involved in energy, build a law firm. But then we really have what really made me feel that this work is so important was my ability to see how we could transcend. I think most of what I do today, I think we need to be pioneers and trailblazers. And that's really important for a lot of Africans, that we can build something and that more young people like you and many others out there can pick up and build that. And I was lucky to get a great undergrad in Maryland, going to Will Mitchell for law school, going to New York for an MBA. But all of that doesn't really matter. What really mattered was what I learned on the streets. I'm still a street kid, what I learned on the street and what I learned from a lot of mentors that really gave me a lot. And that's why I really seriously believe when we look at what I do, a lot of it comes from learning from a lot of people. And I am a product of so many Africans. So I stand on the shoulder of giants. And that's why no matter what, I keep driving, I keep doing what I do.
This is a very interesting, NJ, and I also do believe that leadership is something that we cannot do without, and definitely Africans need that sort of leadership. But do you think that Africa has leadership problems? And I'm going to go into it a little bit because you see, we seem to talk a lot when it comes to things we want to do. We seem to write a lot with things that we want to do. But when it comes to the actions and leading by example, then there's always that, problems or challenges. And we speak about the future of Africa, what we want to do. For example, I'll give you a typical example. I mean, some of the policies are not too far-fetched. It's easier for a Russian to come to South Africa than a Ghanaian to come to South Africa. It doesn't make sense to me. But we want Africa to move forward. How do we get infrastructure development when these basic simple things are even an issue? What is your take on the leadership perspective on Africa?
I mean, we've always had a leadership vacuum in Africa. It's never been something that is new today. I think you need to ask yourself the big question. People that led the biggest generation of changing this continent, they were not in their 50s and 60s. It was young Africans that changed the continent. Nobody remembers, but Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, most of those guys fought and defeated the colonialists in their late 20s and 30s. most of them didn't have PhDs. That's why I say we don't need more PhDs. We need PhDs. People who
Right.
just do stuff.
Right.
And that is leadership, because that kind of leadership comes from young people creating their business, really growing things, and really leading from, sometimes you lead from behind, sometimes you lead from front. So you got to ask yourself this. All these issues we talk about, whether it's policies, lack of finance, it's not the problem of these so-called leaders. You have to really define what leadership is. You have leading Africans and African leaders. So you need to ask yourself, which do you consider as a leader?
Right.
Because if you get an appointment, doesn't necessarily mean it's an anointment.
Yeah.
So I think people who are building little businesses, grabbing things from the bottom, taking stuff in their community, creating opportunities, driving things. That's the spirit. Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela, Julius Nyerere, those guys did so much amazing things to transform this continent. They didn't have no email. They didn't have a cell phone.
Yes.
They didn't have Twitter. They didn't have Snapchat, or what do you call
Facebook.
it? TikTok, Facebook. But they could connect the continent with a vision. Gamal Abdel Nasser, with a vision of Pan-African leadership and Pan-African growth. But today we are so caught up. We got everything, but we can't even get 5 people meeting together to decide on saying, let's get rid of visas. You cannot have the African Intercontinental Free Trade Act. You want goods and services to move, but humans can't move. It's easier for someone to come from France or England or America into Africa and do business and move around Africa, but the African can't move around Africa to do business. But you need to have bold, visionary leadership and say, scrap this out. You know, the American president, Ronald Reagan, in the early 90s, the late 80s, sorry, when he went to Berlin, he said, Mikhail Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And the Berlin Wall came down. Germany became reunited. The Eastern European countries opened up. You saw a renaissance. You saw markets moving, new leaders, new founding fathers, and they changed. It can happen in Africa. We can tear down the walls. We can open it up for young people and really drive them to really power Africa and create opportunities in Africa. It starts with us. I believe we need to be like what Gandhi says, be the change that you want to see. It starts with us.
I totally agree, especially.
It's good you agree with me, because most people don't agree with me.
No, I totally agree with you, and that's the reason why I'm asking this particular topic. NJ, you are within the energy sector. You're very influential. I mean, you're very well knowledged. I've come across your book, Billions at Play.
Mm-hmm.
I've read it. I've sneak peeked into into the book myself, and page 221, for example, you mentioned in the book that government must set the stage. They must create that conducive environment for a thriving environment for entrepreneurs in there, which I find very interesting. And in that regard, I mean, we take countries like Mauritius, where they are the number one safest country in the whole of Africa, the number one country when it comes to ease of doing business. Obviously, they are doing something. They keep ranking first. It doesn't come without challenges as well. And also in your book, you mentioned that African countries must, follow some of the examples of what's working, and then those that are not working, we do without them. What can you say about Mauritius, and what do you think they're doing differently? I'm sure you with the African Energy Chamber, you have an office in Mauritius as well. I want to know what prompted you into having an office in Mauritius, and what are some of the advantages that you see that it's helping thrive your business? What can you say about that?
Mauritius has built something really great, but what's the big example? It tells you that free markets, limited government, individual liberty, rule of law, when you establish these principles, it gets your country to work, because people need to see that there is an open judiciary, that if you have a problem, you don't have a politicians get to influence the judiciary. People need to understand that markets need to work. And with markets work, everyday people work. Mauritius has built that. Mauritius has become that gateway to Africa, that business can say, we're comfortable. We feel like our investments are protected. So businesses have gone into Mauritius, they've invested in Mauritius, but then from Mauritius now, they've gone out to Africa. And they have also seen that they can repatriate funds, they can use Mauritius as a hub for their Africa offices. I mean, you go down there, you got the cyber cities. What they've done there is amazing.
True.
But also look at what this was, an island where the only thing they produced was sugar cane.
Yes.
But they could transform that and look at creating a value chain around sugar cane and looking at the byproduct. Fast move around Africa. Why can't we use our cocoa to create a bigger value chain and create more with our cocoa and transform our economies? So you can really start saying, instead of you buying Swiss chocolate, you could buy African chocolate, because Switzerland doesn't grow cocoa. But look at Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, they can process that cocoa and create that value chain. But also you got to really look at your banking. Your banking system, you got to build it. You got to make it stronger. But then we got to address these issues that we don't want to address. Issues around transparency. It's not a bad thing. We don't need some white guy coming down here telling us that you need to be transparent. You need to stop being corrupt. Sometimes, I mean, you look at Wirecard, in Europe. They got big corruption happening in Europe and everything. So we don't have to take a backseat on saying, oh, Africa is corrupt. But Mauritius created a transparent system. You want to open a business? You go into Mauritius, you get your business set up within 5 to 7 days, and nobody is trying to ask you like, hey man, you got some Coca-Cola for me, you got something for the boys.
Money under the table.
That's not happening. That's correct. Because you know what? They think big, they dream big, they're looking at the future. And I think once you build in those principles, then guess what? You create a multiplier effect. Young people get inspired. They create jobs. They open opportunities. So Mauritius have built something, but now we want we want that to be infectious. And you want to take what Mauritius has done. And this is something I like a lot about Mauritius. We don't have to go to America to understand this. We could look at Mauritius and see how they built a system and it worked well. We don't have to go to Europe to understand this. We could look at it right here in Africa, because when you look at it right here in Africa, it's inspiring because it's at home.
Yeah, I like that. And obviously Mauritius has got some of the internationally recognized banks, and being an international financial sector, obviously they're setting a very great example. NJ, the population of Africa, there's a school of thought that argue that that's great resources. I mean, Africa has one of the youngest rising population. But there's another school of thought that raises a great concern that if these youth are not properly channeled, if their energies are not channeled into the right, programs, that is a looming disaster. And I personally do not see so much going on for the youth. And today we look at a lot of the youth are looking for greener pastures to leave Africa, sadly, into other nations, because they have given up hope on the continent. There's also that belief that Africa is rising, there's hope. And we have people like yourselves who are given opportunities, given hope, teaching the directions on how to take advantage of the opportunities that Africa brings. Do you think that the youth of Africa would have that opportunity eventually to realize Africa's full potential? I mean, our forefathers, they did their part. They fought bloody battles. They gave us the torch, and they gave us the mantle to reunite Africa, create opportunities, reduce poverty, and stuff. But here we are, we still have energy deficit issues here and there, lack of employment here and there. And even when it comes to education system is not fully equipped. I mean, there's a few changes here and there. What is your take on that? Do you think there's hope for the youth? Do you think that they've lost everything and they just should just go about and do what they want to do? I want to know what your opinion.
No, I don't think it's lost. I think that's very negative. There's so much in the continent, and you have. I mean, on Saturday I was at the 40 under 40 event here in Johannesburg, where you could meet a lot of talented young Africans. I think the biggest issue we look at is that we don't see the talent within Africa. It was young Africans that created some the what is right now known as M-Pesa, mobile money,
Right.
that is going around the world. The
Yeah.
Germans learned that from Africa. It came from young people. It's a lot of young Africans that do the beat. I mean, you don't understand when you look at Afro beats and where it is right now
Yeah.
across the world, and they could take from Fela Kuti
Yeah.
and really drive it. Of course, there are problems. Of course, the youths are frustrated, and the youth should be frustrated, because if they're not frustrated, and then now the question you have to be is that, what do you do with that frustration? You take that frustration, turn it into action, and then you drive it. But positive action, I don't mean the kind of action that you go out there burning streets or burning down buildings, because it's easy to burn that to burn down,
Yeah.
but it's very difficult to build.
Yeah.
Turn that around. But then we need to create, again, that comes with when we talk about an environment and real leadership that really looks at these young people and say, we're going to create that opportunity. But government sometimes needs to get out of the way. But then we also need to focus on one thing that is really, really important for a lot of Africans: financing. You need to create financing for young people, and so that they can have seed capital, they could go out, they can generate. I just ask myself this question: why can't we have the next Elon Musk out of Africa? Why can't we have the next Mark Zuckerberg out of Africa? You really think that these young Africans cannot make money? I just want to see them make billions. But the future is not going to be in Europe. It's not going to be in Dubai. Of course, you can engage in Europe. You can engage in Dubai. You can do business. You can create opportunities. You can exchange with technology transfers. But you need to be able to look at this continent: 1.4 billion people, so much opportunity, and really tap into it. But you need to rally around, and you need to push. Some of times the politicians, the only time when they move is when you push them.
Right.
And that's what young people need to start doing. Pushing them, driving them. But you also need to come in strong, because you need to get along together. And it's another thing. Young people shouldn't try to do it all by yourself.
Right.
You have to try to look for partners. Okay, I know everybody wants to be. I'm the CEO. I'm the chairman. I'm the big boy.
Yeah.
I know you want to bam bam. You want to chill with the big boys.
Yeah.
But you don't have to be the only one buying drinks at the club.
That's correct.
It's good that you buy first drink, your other friend buys. So what do I mean by that? You create opportunity. You guys work as a team and you work as a group, because when you are together, you are stronger, you are better, because your ideas might be good, but you might just have a friend who has even a bigger, better idea to take you to the next level. So it's a team sport. It's a team sport. You guys have to work as a team. I learned that very early. I got some people that really helped me. It's a big team, and you need to create that. And even when things don't go well, your partners, your teams sit with you, and you all hold each other, because sometimes the waters can get rough, and you need your team to be with you to drive you to the next place.
Very interesting there. I hope you're listening. It's good to work together as a team. Don't think about yourself only. Unity is very, very important. NJ, I hear you talk a lot about the energy sector, energy deficit. You seem to be a voice for Africans, and I see that a lot, and I admire that a lot. It reminds me of the likes of the Kwame Nkrumahs when they were fighting really hard. I mean, you are the CEO of a law firm. You could have just backed out and said, okay, I'm okay. I've got my law firm. I can feed my family. You could just choose to be selfish and do what you want to do. But you've gone the extra mile, and you are voicing for Africa. That's something I find very extraordinary and very selfless. That I do think that if we had majority of African leaders doing exactly what you're doing, we would be an extra mile than where we are today.
There are a lot of people doing a lot. I think The issue there is that I just have a loud mouth, and I don't let nobody shut me down or shut me up. I believe in the art of communicating my views. I'm very, very vocal about where I stand on this. But here's what it is. It's not about you. This is bigger than you. You place on earth for something. And when you realize that, we have to look at that purpose-driven leadership, that purpose-driven Africa. Then you start to really believe, and you start to really know you have to drive and you have to inspire others. Because our generation, as much as you look at young people, we got to be pioneers and trailblazers.
True.
And you sometimes, I have what I call the Mourinho strategy. I sit back, I take the heat for everybody, I let them punch me, but I always make sure that my team goes out there and work, and they go out there and do that. Let me be the distraction. Let me be the buffoon that they want to hit. Let me be the guy that because I'm a big boy. I can take the punches. I can take the heat, and that's fine with me.
And that's great leadership personality.
But the most important thing is that to guide my team and get them really moving. But what is important for me, and I look at where we are today, it's unacceptable that 600 million people get up, go to bed every day without electricity.
Wow.
That is not acceptable. That's a human rights issue. 900 million go to bed, get up every day without access to clean cooking. They have to burn wood in order to do that. That is unacceptable. So we can't be talking about transforming Africa and really growing Africa without providing or dealing with energy poverty issues. I mean, look at financing that goes to women. When you look at renewables in Africa, less than 2% global investment on renewables has gone to Africa. When you look at the Black woman in energy, in corporate Africa, Black women are still the last hired and the first fired.
True.
And that is unacceptable.
True.
These issues are so critical because when I look at it, that could be my mother, could be my sister, could be my daughter, and we have to put really premium to that. So if you've been given a voice, you've been given a mic, you want to use it, and you want to be able to drive it and drive that message so that people can get awoken, can call, it's a call for action and really solve that. If we don't do that, we would really be missing a key component of what makes us Africans. And that drive will say the Africa we want. So I don't want to be one of those people who just complains. I want to be doing stuff.
Taking
and
action.
When you're doing stuff, then you're really part of that generation that changes things and drive things up.
Right.
But if you want to be a passive bystander, I don't like you.
Right. So, NJ, how did we actually get to this point? I mean, talking about the energy deficit, how did Africa get to this point? And what is the future? What is the way forward?
I think after colonization ended, a lot of Western countries, they wanted to focus, they look at Africa and say, what do we want for us? It wasn't what we wanted for Africa. They look at your natural resources and they said, what do I do with your natural resources? I want your oil for European and American refineries. So if you found natural gas, you didn't want to produce it. Because what you do with natural gas, you'll build urea, ammonia, NPK, fertilizer plants. So what are you going to do with fertilizer? You would boost agriculture, right? So when you boost agriculture, people are going to have jobs, they're going to have opportunities, they're going to stay in their communities, there's going to be growth, you'll be able to drive manufacturing, industrialization, and you'll be able to do for yourself what you expect the Europeans to do for you. So that's what that's what happened. But then oil was good because you could ship oil to the Netherlands that doesn't produce anything. You ship it to their refineries and they send you back to you. You pay expensive. So Africa was always seen as a big consumer base for the after post-colonization. And we also became rentier state. We never learned how to put skin in the game. And that's one thing you need to look at when you look at entrepreneurship. You got to put skin in the game. There's no free money. I think this idea that you think that some benevolent white man is going to come give it to you. And we focus a lot on aid. We like free money. It's just not, it's not going to work. I know a lot of people are not going to like me saying this. Do you have spent $800 billion of aid money has come into Africa? $800 billion. What do we have to show for it? Nothing. Nothing. So cut out the aid, focus. Let's build markets. Let's build work on entrepreneurship. Let's create development.
Let's empower them.
That's how you work for the future.
Yeah.
You don't need aid.
So hands out or hand out actually keeps people down. I picked that from the book.
Absolutely. Handouts keep people down because you know what? You are waiting for somebody to give you something. There's so many jobs without young people to fill. And there's so many young people without jobs. Something is missing in the middle. Something is missing. But also we need to create this tradition where we don't get jealous about young people or others trying to do things, because you got a few, let's be honest, some of our people got issues. You got a few elitist Africans that can get very jealous of young people trying to come up. And that jealous mindset, it's always there because you didn't go to this school or you didn't go to that or your daddy wasn't this or you come from. We need to end that nonsense. Because people who come from bottom, they should also have a chance to go up. And I think that if we eradicate that mindset, which is sometimes going to be hard, you just got to push forward. But we need to really create those environments that let people thrive. But we need to embrace success. We need to nurture it. We need to promote it. We need to celebrate it. Because when you see people doing things, celebrate, nurture them, and really drive them up and encourage them, rather than looking for ways to tear them down, as we've been seeing. And we've been seeing, we get rid of that crap in a barrel mentality. We build the Africa we deserve, and we encourage its young people rather than spend time tearing them down.
This is solid. I really like this part, and I think this is very true. We don't celebrate our people too much, and I think it's high time we as Africans begin to acknowledge what we have and celebrate our own heroes. And it goes to the media as well. I think the media must also help in writing our own stories rather than leaving it out for people to write it for us. NJ, let's talk about the future. Last year, I was at the African Energy Week myself for the first time in Cape Town.
Very nice show.
I saw what was happening. I saw deals being signed.
I'm happy you didn't go to Dubai.
Of course. And I'm very excited it happened in Africa. And looking at the event, it's like one of the biggest events that ever happened in Africa, and it's consistently going on. I saw deals being signed. I saw progress. I'm going to confess on tape, that actually motivated me even to become someone better. And knowing the man behind this was NJ, I was like, wow. And in fact, when I first heard of you, I thought he's a very old man, because let's put cards on the table. We have an environment in Africa where some of success is attributed to old age people, because we don't have that conducive environment, and we don't advise young people to take up that, mantle. So seeing a young man doing all this, and we're like, how is it happening? So what's next for African Energy Week 2023? What should we expect? What should viewers expect out here?
First of all, you can do anything. If your mind can conceive it, you can achieve it. And don't let nobody hold you back. Make your dreams be outrageously crazy. And there's the whole thing that tells you, shoot for the stars. If you miss, you're going to land on the moon.
Yeah.
But you're still going to be up there. That's down here. All right. So keep going. Don't let them stop you. And I think, first of all, African Energy Week was very important. When these people said Africa was bad, there's no place in Africa where we can host people to do deals in Africa. We said, we're going to do it in Africa. Right. We're going to keep it in Africa. Right. We're not taking that. Imagine the African Football Nations Cup being played in Dubai or Qatar or in Paris. You know what that insults? Kwame Nkrumah and Nyerere and Gamal Abdel Nasser, they'll be rolling in their graves.
I do agree.
They'll be rolling. They'll be going crazy.
I agree.
And they had these guys coming down fighting me and saying that you're wrong to say that, and they take me to court. I'm like, no problem. This is what I do for a living. Yeah. I'm ready. Yeah. But I think what is most important was was the deal-making platform that we got Africans to say, we're going to do deals with each other. You guys going to sign multi-billion-dollar deals. You're going to look at your resources and you're going to do that. But bigger than that, we're going to ask for a just energy transition.
Right.
We're not going to sit back and say our energy transition is not going to be just because we still produce less than 3% greenhouse gas emissions. Those who are producing 25, 30%, they need to decarbonize. We need to industrialize. It's like walking in the room and telling the skinny kid, the skinniest kid in class, and you tell the skinniest kid in class and you say, you need to lose weight. When the fat boys are there, they continue to eat. That's just crazy.
So that's bullying indirectly.
It's bullying.
Right.
And you need to be able to stand up to a bully. And I know one thing about dealing with bullies.
Yeah.
I walk right on the other side and I smack you in the head. And that's how you get the bully's attention. And that's what I do. As long as I keep doing this thing, I will keep standing up to bullies because I'm not going to be bullied. I don't give, I don't back down. I don't give in, and we don't sell out. You just keep pushing, and the bully will keep coming, but you just continue to push forward. African Energy Week is here to stay. We are going to have the next 50 years, but it is so important that we have a deal-making platform. But we have a platform like we talk about us telling our story, to tell our stories. Because if we don't tell our stories, somebody else is going to tell our story and they're not going to tell it the way we want to. Because they have always written and defined our history. We need to be able to write and define our history and encourage young people to be part of that history, but also not just to walk in there as passive bystanders, but also be active participants in doing deals, creating new projects, driving up whatever with its mini grids in small communities to power rural areas, riding us on this energy train to really see that they are part of providing LPG, so we have clean cooking and really ensure that we're taking care of our environment, riding on this train to ensure that they address the climate challenge. We're not against the climate challenge. We need to fix the climate challenge so we can stop cutting trees to cook and use LPG. We can stop really driving our communities in look at the urban centers. Some of them urban decay. We need to really address those issues. But then we look at the upstream and look at offshore. There shouldn't be a reason why Africans are not participating more than ever in the oil and gas space. We need to be there. And there is no reason, and I'm not ashamed to say, I want more Africans to participate in oil and gas. They should be the drivers. They should acquire assets, and they should be able to really produce energy for this continent. And no one is going to do it for us, but we have to also look at attracting finance. That's why we have to work with everybody across the area. But stay African. And, people say stay woke. I say stay dope.
I like that. NJ, are you a Pan-African?
I don't have to walk. I think that's what I always tell people. I don't have to walk out there and say I'm a Pan-Africanist. I think yes, what it is. Your deeds define you, not your words. Your actions that you take every day. When it comes into standing up, promoting, doing business, I choose to put my headquarters in Africa and not in some Western country. I choose to say that we really keep Africa focused on what we have to do. And I think that you got a lot of people out there who are talking, it reminds me of the whole James Brown song, talking loud, doing nothing. I think we need to talk less and we need to do more. And by doing that, that collective action really creates opportunity and inspires people. Generations need to be inspired to do more, balance more. Look at what Orama is doing, taking Mauritius to across Africa, bringing Africa right into Mauritius, and then seeing and showing people that they can be able to build something, create something, encourage that Africans can trade among themselves and open up without visas. If fighting, struggling, encouraging, promoting African growth. So we don't need to see more African young people trying to cross the Mediterranean or the Sahara Desert to go into Europe and everything. We need to encourage them to build back stronger at home, right here in Africa. They can go to Europe for vacation. It is so good. And young Africans shouldn't be scared to make money. They should be able to go be proud that they make $1 billion. I want to make $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 billion. I don't care what nobody says. I'm a capitalist.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you call me a Pan-Africanist, that's fine. You call me a capitalist, I'm not ashamed of it.
Right.
Everybody needs to make money.
Yeah.
Because you know what? It's very painful being broke.
Very, yeah.
Very painful. When you're broke, you understand how bad life is, how lonely it is.
It is. They say the poor man has no friends.
That's true.
NJ, thank you very much for having you on the show. I'm not going to take much of your time. I just want to ask you just a few more questions, then we wrap it up. Your book, Billions at Play, you suggested very key and pragmatic measures that could solve problems within the energy sector. But reading the book, I could relate to other sectors that were not even energy related, and those pragmatic measures could easily go for the same solution. I mean, it's very practicable. And today we have 55 African countries with different currencies, but none of them is in the international league. We have several central banks. I mean, all the 55 countries has its own central bank, but none of them is solid enough still to make the financial sector in Africa strong. Talk about telecommunication. You move from South Africa to Namibia, you have to change the SIM card. From Ghana to Nigeria, you change the SIM card. Whereas in America, you have one SIM card throughout different states and it works. Do you think Africa would achieve this agenda? I mean, the African Union Agenda 2063, they've highlighted these are some of the things they want to achieve. But you and I know that most of the time we write it nicely on paper, but when it comes to action, it doesn't really happen. Do you have confidence that at some point Africa would become really one, and it's not going to be a sentimental things that we just talk about or debate about? And you really think that, or do you think things need to change?
I don't go with sentiments. I think we need to change things. I'm not a big fan of the African Union. I don't even think they like me. I don't like them. And I think that they need to reform that institution. I don't go to their meetings. They invite me. I don't show up. I think that it's too much talk, less action, and that's not my kind of place. Right. I do think, though, business can really change things. We take practical steps. When you have an African Union that the entire Africa, we cannot necessarily. I mean, China builds our headquarters for the African Union, and you need aid money to run the African Union. Every project they try to do, it's written by Western countries and handed to them. That's not an African Union. I don't believe in that. Right. I think an African Union that is financed, sponsored, built, run by Africans without foreign interference, it's a real union because we're talking our issues and everything. So sometimes people say, but why don't you want Europeans or Americans or others in the room? I said, that's why you go to the United Nations.
Absolutely.
You do that in the United Nations. Absolutely. When we sit in our home, we should discuss among ourselves and come up with solutions among ourselves to drive things. I think there's a myriad of problems across the continent. We need to fix it. I think sometimes we need to cut down our egos and really come up and say, you know what? I don't have to be minister. I don't have to be doctor. I don't have to be that. We just have to be able to drive this. So cut down this. We need to really show leadership, and we need to really be able to drive this. And if we drive that, that helps. But that leadership has to come from within Africa. We don't need to give up hope. And that's the biggest thing.
Right.
We're resilient people. Heck, we survived COVID without vaccines.
Yeah, Ebola and all that.
So we don't need to give up hope. There's so much to be done within the continent.
Right.
Can we have a single currency? I think it's a good thing. Let's really work towards that. The dollar is working, the euro is working. There's no reason why 1.4 billion people cannot have this single currency like the yuan that the Chinese have, or the rupees as the Indians have. Look at the Indian economy. It's the fifth largest economy in the world, $2.9 trillion. They are doing very well. They were also colonized, but a few decades later, they were able to transform. Africans have to look at what former colonies have done to transform themselves, and we do that. But we need to cut down the political differences. We need to depoliticize the continent and really be able to drive that. And you know how you do that? You encourage more trade, you encourage more business. And once you have more trade, more business, more financing going on, then we break down those barriers and start thinking as Africans and growing the continent. So we defeat all the issues like xenophobia or tribalism, because all of that comes out of fear. And when you eradicate fear, then the ability to unleash true potentials happen.
Right. I'm amazed and overwhelmed by the wisdom that NJ shares. And NJ, I know you're a very busy man. Even to get you on this program was I had to your PA had to be my best friend so I could find my way through to get you. I'm looking forward to another episode, but thank you very much. The world is looking at you. You are one that motivates people, including myself, and secretly I will tell you, you are my mentor. So
I'm honored.
Thank you very much. And many people are watching you. Many people want the opportunity to even speak with you. And like you said, leadership. And they count on your leadership. You're doing a great job. We want you to continue. We see people like you fighting for the energy sector, fighting for Africa, voicing for Africa. You brought the Africa Energy Week here. You believed in Africa, that Africa can do it. And it has become very successful. And I think that people will look at that example and follow suit. And I think more of NJs in Africa can change Africa. What is your final word to the people regarding energy with Africa? Anything you want to say to your viewers out there? It's over to you, NJ.
I'll leave you with this. One of my biggest heroes in history is Martin King Jr. He used the words, he says, the arc of a moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I do agree with Dr. King, but it doesn't bend by itself. It's everyday people that help shape it, that burn it, that bend it towards that moral place, towards that justice. And it's up to us to really move out and do that change. It's up to us to really start. And it doesn't mean you have to go into politics. I'm not a politician. Heck, I don't even think I'll fit in any kind of political place. I'm too crazy for them. But I also believe this though. Creating your little business, driving up opportunities, working in your communities, and just doing your own thing. And don't be ashamed to make money. Don't be ashamed to want to go big. Don't be ashamed to have those big dreams, because when you do, you are creating something. Most of us come from nothing, and we're going to go into something. A lot of Africans, it doesn't matter what situation you start in life, we came from disgrace to amazing grace, and it's going to continue going that way. But just keep believing and keep driving, and don't let anybody stop you. Don't let them. If they try, block them, delete them, and don't talk to them anymore. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. This program is brought to you once again by Orama Corporate Services.